Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel led the central act for the 61st anniversary of the proclamation of the socialist nature of the Cuban Revolution. Russia's foreign minister denounced Germany's involvement in biomilitary activities in Ukraine. The Israeli regime's army violence against Palestinians increased fivefold so far this year. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. This Saturday, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel led in Havana the central act for the 61st anniversary of the proclamation of the socialist nature of the Cuban Revolution. The event was held at the downtown corner of 23rd and 12th in Verado, where on April 16, 1961, the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, made the statement prior to the mercenary invasion of the Bay of Pigs, sponsored by the United States. The invading force lost against the Rebel Army and the National Revolutionary Militias after 72 hours of combat. 7 people died and 50 were wounded. During the ceremony, President Díaz-Canel recalled a fragment of the speech made by Fidel Castro, which highlights the first defeat of the United States in Latin America. President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, updated the number of detainees during the regime of exception, which has now reached more than 12,000 people. Bukele has described these detainees as terrorists, and this operation has occurred in 21 days, according to the head of state. The report of the National Police confirms that to date 12,169 gang members have been detained. Only in the last day, 599 criminals were captured. Exhibited as a triumph, the police headquarters reported only one homicide in the entire national territory since the beginning of the exception regime. The incident was reported to have occurred at 11:30 p.m. local time in the municipality of Conchuaca. No further details were offered, as well as will be recalled on March 27th at the request of the presidency of the country, and after reporting the bloodiest weekend of the century, the Legislative Assembly decreed the regime of exception, a measure that has divided the country between those who support it and those who criticize it for violating fundamental guarantees. The Peruvian government authorities criticized the slave show that took place at a wedding of the Spanish and Peru elite held in the country as an exaltation of racism. The Peruvian government's office in charge of the fight against racism described as disrespectful the setting of the wedding between the daughter of a Peruvian politician and a Spanish aristocrat, which recreated forced labor from past eras and was decorated with people dressed as indigenous people doing domestic chores. In this sense, the office expressed its rejection of the inappropriate use of the country's cultural diversity for commercial or leisure purposes, saying it is perceived as exotic. The Racism Alert platform also condemns such staging, after considering that it reinforces historical stereotypes that do not add to the respectful treatment that the millenary culture of Peru deserves. Brazilian federal police assured this Saturday that they will reinforce security in the Chipaya indigenous land in the southwest of the state of Para due to the recurrent denunciations of its inhabitants of an invasion of the territory by illegal miners. According to a police report, a team from the National Security Force had arrived in Chipaya indigenous land to try to avoid a confrontation between the indigenous people and the illegal miners, because their intentions apparently was to illegally extract minerals in the region of the Iriri Extractive Reserve, located in the Amazon, in a region known as Terra do Meio. According to the chief of the village and an indigenous female leader belonging to the people Yuma Chipaya, the miners had been aggressive with her father, a situation that almost ended in confrontations. Tropical storm Maggie battered the Philippines last weekend and has by Saturday caused at least 167 deaths and another 110 people are still missing, official data show. Central and southern parts of the Philippines were hit by flooding and massive landslides, with the central Leyte province being the worst struck with 132 deaths. The city of Baybay in Leyte province has retrieved 110 bodies so far from the landslides in several villages in the city. Maggie, which hit land last Sunday, is the first tropical storm this year to hit the Southeast Asian country. According to the information released by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, 16 cities in the Philippines are in a state of disaster due to the impact of Maggie, with nearly 10,000 houses damaged and water and power cut off in many cities. As many as 1.93 million people suffer from impacts of the natural disaster. Members of the Extinction Rebellion Collective blocked Parisian traffic on Saturday to protest against climate inaction by the government. The protest was staged a week before the second round of the French presidential elections. According to Extinction Rebellion's Twitter page, the aim was to bring climate issues at the center of the presidential debate. Activists demanded from the two presidential candidates, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, to make commitments towards protecting the environment. Protesters sat on the road forming lines and used haystacks to hold traffic. Police were present at a largely peaceful protest which was aimed to last for 3 days.
It is also to denounce the false social message of the extreme party. It has slogans which are close to trade union slogans, but when we dig deeper, when they say that we want to raise the level of health or lower the retirement age by exempting small buses from social charges, the MEDEF would sign tomorrow. It is social usurpation and fascism and racism that we are denouncing today.
I can't stand it if the far right comes to power. I don't hope to live through it in my life. I find the situation dramatic from this point of view, given that we have the impression that we are denying all the social movements of the previous century, that it is the fruit of the collapse of the traditional parties and in particular of the Socialist Party.
Wildfires raged near residential areas surrounding northern Italy's Lake Maggiore on Saturday. Video taken from the Italian Fire Department showed planes pouring water on a large forest fire reportedly last Wednesday. The planes aimed to prevent the flames from reaching the towns of San Bernardino Verbano and Anghera. Firefighters and volunteers in San Bernardino Verbano worked together on the ground to prevent the fire from reaching nearby National Park of Valgrande. In Anghera, several firefighter squads alongside 2 helicopters and 3 Canada airplanes worked to contain the fire from destroying nearby houses. Residents were evacuated and several drones were used to monitor the fire from above. The cause of the wildfire was not immediately clear on Saturday. However, the area had reportedly experienced a long period of persistent drought during the last months. We're taking a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. On Saturday, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova announced that Germany has been involved in biomilitary activities in Ukraine. In statements to the press, Zakharova said since 2013 the German government implemented the National Biosecurity Program, in the framework of which a partnership with government agencies and research organizations in the target countries is carried out. In this regard, the spokeswoman cited information released by the German Foreign Ministry and indicated that between 2020 and 2022, the third phase of the program is already underway, which includes the collection of sensitive epidemic information in third countries, including through the use of mass data technologies. Zakharova also referred to the development of partner countries' infrastructure for working with dangerous biological agents. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman discussed the situation in Ukraine during a telephone conversation this Friday. At the request of the Saudi side, a telephone call took place between President Putin and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the Kremlin said. Both discussed key geopolitical issues and exchanged views on some issues on the international agenda, including the situation in Ukraine and the solution of the crisis in Yemen. The parties appreciated the joint work within the framework of the OPEC Plus alliance, aimed at ensuring the stability of the world oil market. Moreover, during the talks, Vladimir Putin and Mohammed bin Salman also discussed outstanding issues on the bilateral agenda, including the sphere of trade and economy. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the destruction of more than 811 Ukrainian military targets between Friday night and Saturday morning. According to the Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov, Russian missiles and artillery troops destroyed 43 checkpoints, 8 convoys carrying fuel, and about 760 strategic military areas. The spokesman also noted that the Russian Air Force dismantled another 67 bases of Ukrainian military operatives, while the anti-aircraft defense shot down a Su-25 fighter of the Ukrainian forces. Since the beginning of the Russian special operation, Russian troops destroyed 133 aircraft, 246 anti-aircraft missile systems, 458 drones, 2,246 tanks, and 252 rocket launchers. Now in Ukraine, Donetsk authorities reported that more than 500 people were evacuated from the city of Mariupol in the last 24 hours. The evacuated citizens were lodged in shelters and in the help center of the emergency ministry of the self-proclaimed People's Republic of Donetsk. Authorities further detailed that since March 5th, some 18,429 people have been sheltered in the Donetsk Relief Center. These civilians were evacuated at a time of increased tensions between the White House and the Kremlin, after the United States announced new military aid to the Ukrainian army, while Moscow warned that sending military equipment to Ukraine could lead to an escalation of the conflict and trigger further consequences. In Germany, thousands of activists called for an end to the conflict in Ukraine as part of the traditional Easter parades. Citizens of Berlin, Kappeln, and other cities called for an end to the war in Ukraine in order to put an end to the consequences of the conflict for the lives of the people of that nation. In contrast, the German government, as a member of NATO, participates in sending weapons to Ukraine, and the German Deputy Foreign Minister Robert Habeck asked to turn peace demonstrations into messages of rejections against the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I'm here today because it's just as important that there are also people who are not calling for more weapons and for more escalation, but for de-escalation, peace and negotiations.
With a heavy heart, I think now you probably have to supply weapons. As I said, I am actually absolutely against it, and all weapons should be destroyed, except in the current situation.
Counter-protesters demonstrating against a far-right group's intention to burn a Quran in Örebro in central Sweden clashed with police on Friday night. It was the second day running that there had been clashes on the fringes of the rally by the anti-immigration and anti-Islamic hardline movement led by Danish-Swedish Rasmus Paludan. At each gathering, usually only attended by a few sympathizers, he attempts to burn a Quran. Paludan has provoked other incidents on several occasions in recent years. In November 2020, he was arrested in France and then deported. 5 other activists were arrested in Belgium shortly afterwards, accused of wanting to spread hatred by burning a Quran in Brussels. In Italy, the public debt reached a new record level, standing at over 2 million euros in February this year, with a considerable increase of 2.1% since December 2021, according to the Bank of Italy. The previous record had been lower in August last year, when the debt stood at 2 million euros. However, by December it had dropped. Meanwhile, tax revenues totaled 30 billion euros at the end of March, 9.8% higher than last year at the same time, as people began to postpone payments in order to mitigate the economic and social impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pope Francis announced on Saturday at the Vatican that the European Union discriminates against refugees on the basis of their ethnicity. Pope Francis has criticized the double standards of the European Union's asylum policy, describing it as a racist because it favors refugees from Ukraine and rejects displaced people arriving from other regions. The Supreme Pontiff lamented that the European countries welcome with open arms some and close the doors to others. He argued that refugees are divided into first and second class according to the color of their skin, the country they come from, whether the nation is developed or underdeveloped. We are racist and this is bad, the Pope said in an interview with the Italian channel RAI. We have more news coming up after the final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. According to specialized agency, violence by the Israeli regime's army against Palestinians has increased fivefold so far this year. According to a statement by the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor, Israeli forces have freed 47 Palestinians since the beginning of 2022, including 8 children and 2 women. Euromed also stated that since the beginning of April, the military assassinated 18 Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Human rights organizations report that Israeli forces have intensified killings and repression against Palestinian citizens in the last few days. According to reports, violence in the Israeli-occupied territories intensified after Prime Minister Naftali Bennett authorized Israeli forces to act with full freedom. Qatar and Saudi Arabia have condemned the actions of the Israeli security forces who attacked Palestinians when they attended prayers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The Saudi Arabian Foreign Ministry condemned the assault on the Al-Aqsa Mosque as well as the attack on worshippers inside the mosque and in the square outside, considering these actions as an attack on their sanctity. The Qatari authorities, for its part, pointed out that the actions of the Israeli security forces were the result of a possible neglect of the rights of the Palestinian citizens in the face of the silence of the international community and the lack of response to the violence of the occupying force. More than 340 Palestinians received medical assistance on April 15 following clashes in Jerusalem and the West Bank. 154 were injured in the esplanade of the mosque in Jerusalem. In Raqqa and over in Syria, the separatist militia, supported by Washington, closed dozens of stores and kidnapped several civilians. Local activists reported that members of the militia Syrian Democratic Forces attacked several villages in Raqqa province, closing more than 20 stores and kidnapped several employees, taking them to unknown destinations. These acts are the response of the terrorists, supported by Washington, to the many citizens who refuse to cooperate and send their children to fight in their ranks. In Iran, the Islamic Revolution Guardian Corps have seized a vessel carrying smuggled fuel in the Persian Gulf. This will be the second such seizure so far this week. The head of the Public Relations Department in the second zone of the Naval Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Colonel Gholam Hossein Hosseini, informed on Friday that the ship carrying 250,000 liters of fuel was seized by the Iranian forces. He explained that during the seizure, 7 crew members were detained and will remain under custody until the investigation and legal procedures are completed. Sri Lanka on Saturday announced a 5-day share trading halt after the country hiked interest rates and declared a default on its external debt during the traditional New Year holiday as trade unions joined protests demanding the president's resignation. The move came ahead of Colombo's planned talks with the International Monetary Fund in Washington on Monday to negotiate a bailout as the country has run out of foreign exchange to finance even the most essential imports. The island nation is grappling with its worst economic downturn since independence in 1948, with regular blackouts and acute shortages of food and fuel, in addition to record inflation. The crisis has caused widespread misery and for Sri Lanka's 22 million people and led to weeks of anti-government protests. Colombo Stock Exchange officials say they were under pressure from brokers and investors not to reopen on Monday to prevent an anticipated collapse of the market.
Came to the Wildfires to join with this youth struggle. Today is the 8th day of our youth struggle, asking the Rajapaksa regiment to go home, but they are not listening to the people. They are not listening. From next week onward, we will resort to trade union actions. If you ask from us a general strike, we are ready to give you a general strike and throw away you. So before that, we are asking the Rajapaksa regiment, the Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the Rajapaksa regiment to go home.
The Great Renaissance Dam is back on the news following the most recent governmental declaration this Friday. Ethiopia assured that it has a priority in its foreign policy strategy to agree on the dam's operation and show interest in resuming trilateral negotiations with the support of the African Union. The big dam is a vital issue for the survival of the area since April 2021. The negotiation process has been stalled despite the World Bank's efforts. The African Union and the Arab League. The lives of 29 million people are at risk in the region, including almost 2 million displaced children in Ethiopia. According to the Intergovernmental Authorities for the Development of East Africa, the shortage of rainfall will continue and the plight could worsen. This is why Ethiopia tries to work again with Egypt and Sudan to reach a new agreement. A tanker carrying 750 tons of diesel fuel from Egypt to Malta sank Saturday in the Gulf of Gabes of Tunisia's southeast coast, sparking a rush to avoid a spill. The ship sank this morning in the Tunisian territorial waters but has still caused no leak. The tanker was headed from the Egyptian port of Damietta to the European island of Malta when it requested entry to Tunisian waters on Friday evening due to bad weather. The tanker is 58 meters long and 9 meters wide. It began taking water around 7 kilometers offshore in the Gulf of Gabes. According to a Tunisian Environment Ministry statement, authorities have activated the National Emergency Plan for the prevention of marine pollution with the aim of avoiding the spread of pollutants. Before the ship sank, the ministry had described the situation as alarming but under control. The Gulf of Gabes was traditionally a fishing area. Three Chinese astronauts of the Shenzhou 13 space mission arrived at a military airport in Beijing on Saturday afternoon and received a simple but warm welcome after spending 6 months aboard the China's space station Tiangong. The return capsule of Shenzhou 13 carrying astronauts Shai Shigan, Wang Jiaping, and Ye Guangfu touched down safely at the Dongfeng landing site in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region early in the day. Shai was the first to disembark in a chair at Beijing's Xijiao Military Airport. The three must adapt to gravity after spending half a year in space. In the Chinese capital, the astronauts were warmly greeted by officials, military officers, and their family members. The crew lived and worked on China's space station Tiangong for 183 days, the longest stay in space by Chinese astronauts. The three astronauts completed multiple tasks over the past few months, including 2 extravehicular activities, 2 life science lectures, and a number of sci-tech experiments and application projects. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.